Hello and welcome back to Bennett's BikeSocial. I'm Michael Mann and you join us for episode 27 of our Better Riding series, powered by Honda Motorcycles. Well, joining me as always is our expert motorbike coach, Mark McVeigh, all the way from Australia. Are you there, Mark?
G'day, Mr. Mann. Good to see you. How's things?
Here he is. Yes, fab. Thanks. Got my fancy new Bennett's t-shirt. Doesn't look very much from over there, does it? But it's all ready for our headline sponsorship of the Bike Shed show in a month or two's time.
Nice.
Anyway, how are you?
Yes, excellent. Thank you. Ready for the next one, 27.
Brilliant. Okay, Mr. McVeigh, what are we learning about today?
Today, episode 27, where should motorbike riders look in corners? So we're going to talk about visual strategies and habits, target fixation, scanning, lifesavers, that type of thing. And, most riders, think vision's pretty straightforward. Look where you want to go, right? But that's only the start. And of course, in the corners, that's where all the fun is, but also that's where all the complexity and, the things that can be unforgiving can happen. So, that we can see all the stats and the research identifies, failing to look properly is one of those major factors.
Yeah, fairly obvious, isn't it? I guess that the title of the video, everyone's just going to say, "Well, look as far as look ahead, look as far as ahead as you can." But it's a lot more detailed than that. And here we are trying to help um, riders be better at doing that. So anyway, but look, you've got a motorcycle school. You must have seen plenty of issues and examples at the school, right?
Yeah, and even before that, 40 years of road riding and racing and coaching. But one pattern kind of stands out, amongst really good riders. They don't just have, throttle, brake, steer, body position. Their vision is exponentially better. And, at my school, Moto DNA, we've researched thousands of riders, using sensors, GPS, IMUs, and eye tracking. And then we overlaid all that data against the riders' proficiency data. And, it clearly shows the better riders, they look earlier and further, but they also have a strategy. And then the opposite end of the scale, the riders that are kind of, less proficient and I guess, inexperienced, they often stare too close in front of the bike. And then what happens is they kind of get everything's a surprise. And then that's reflected in lots of, decisions, late decisions, and, things like steering jerk.
I've seen, in previous episodes, we talked about that eye tracking technology, and we've actually used it here at BikeSocial before in a feature we did a few years ago, and it's absolutely fascinating.
It is.
Just how you can see a real obvious difference between a novice rider and an expert rider. Fascinating stuff. All right, is there a sort of a hard and fast rule then, in terms of where should you look in a corner?
Yeah, well, funny you talk about eye tracking, and in the twisties, you can see here, even though it's darting around, the main visual reference should be the vanishing point or the limit point, and that's kind of where the two edges of the road appear. And this eye tracking system, it's very like their laboratory kind of equipment, so it dances around. But the vanishing point kind of tells you the story of the corner. That's the key thing. So, if it's moving away from you, the corner's kind of opening up. And then if the vanishing point's coming towards you, the corner is tightening. And that one simple kind of cue gives you heaps of information and helps you kind of read the corner's shape.
I was taught once to, especially where I live, which is sort of out in the sticks, and you've got a lot of country. Actually, the land is pretty flat. That you can often look at reference points like trees or telegraph poles to, or if on a road that you're not familiar with, to almost work out how tight the corner is or where the road ahead goes, which is all quite interesting stuff. But look, in generally speaking, have you got evidence, data, or thoughts about on one side of the coin, we know where riders should look, but actually, where do riders actually look? Presumably, a lot of that's down to the conditions of the road. And I expect there'll be a lot of comments in this video about look where the potholes are.
Absolutely. Yeah, most riders are kind of looking down at the surface, especially, If you look at the yellow here, that's kind of where we're seeing riders looking, whereas really we like them to see them looking at the green bit, and that's kind of to make them feel safe. They're checking gravel and potholes, but that can become a trap. So, when you look at the research, a lot of it shows that motorcycles, their gaze is on the road surface more than car drivers, and they're often, looking closer than their safe stopping distance. So that's really important. And the research also showed that riders are kind of fixated on the road surface about 30% of the time compared to drivers who barely look at the surface, which is kind of makes sense, right? If you're on a bike, but that's a big deal. And if you're looking closer than the distance that you need to stop, then every corner kind of becomes a surprise, which is not what we want.
No, not at all. And you do see so many riders with that problem, don't you? And generally speaking, people do want to be better at all those kind of hobbies that they do, and hopefully that's the case with motorcycling. We're trying to bring that out in this series that will make them more advanced, better at riding, taking out all of those issues, those problems. But do, you talk about research, Mark. Is there anything else that kind of tells you?
Yeah, the big measurement is kind of sight distance to stopping distance ratio. And in plain English, that basically means that your eyes are operating inside your stopping distance. And that's obviously when the corners become surprises. You stop planning and you start reacting. So light steering, panic braking, target fixation, all those kind of things. So that kind of research then with the sight distance to stopping distance ratio, that's really dropped like for beginners and untrained riders. That's the research really shows that. So the message is kind of like don't ride faster than your eyes can see.
Oh, that's fascinating. Yeah, it's and when you start to think about some of the messages that we try to portray in this, it's really obvious, isn't it? But until someone actually tells you and tells you how to do it, or kind of advice or examples of how to do it, it doesn't kind of compute, does it? But do you and on that, do you have any kind of practices or strategies for cornering?
Yeah, absolutely. We kind of get the visual strategy kind of works in layers. So if I've got a bit of a reel here that I can run through, I'll run this through first, and then we'll break it down into different steps, if you like. So that's kind of just a little bit of a run section there. So if you look at here, visually, the main gaze, that should be forward. So you're looking up at the limit point, and then use your peripheral vision. You kind of understand where the sides of the road are, and you can see the road's a bit bumpy here. There must be heavy trucks or something on it, or lorries. So the riders kind of stand out of that. So peripheral might be attracted to there, and then you might have like a secondary gaze, just to glance down to see, what that actually is, if that kind of makes sense. And then as we kind of move forward to the next phase, then again, your mind gaze is forward, like all the time, forward. Using the peripherals, like there's obviously a bit of a junction here. You don't even need to be looking there. Like peripherally, you can see that. If there's a car came, then you might have a secondary glaze across there. And then again, the road, you can see more of the road here that's quite damaged. So again, that's peripherally, you're going to kind of see what's going on there. And then as we move on, you can really see the road now. So it's no wonder, this rider, there's a right-hand bend. So, normally you'd be in line position 1 to see and be seen. But, this looks like a bit of a cliff. So it's no wonder the riders staying out of there. But, they're looking up at that limit point. And then as we move this video forward to the next phase, then there's something there at the limit point, so that's going to take your attention for sure. And then as we move through the next bit, yep, there's a car. And again, when you think about safety bubble where you should be in, you'd really want to be in one, but the rider's obviously it's obviously the road's not great, so he's kind of sitting in the middle, and he's probably we can see the speed there, so he's on the speed limit. But the kind of visual cues there, And then as we play on through the next bit of the clip, then you're looking up through the next phase of corners, if that makes sense. So yeah, so
Yeah.
three things: mind gaze, and then secondary gaze, and then your peripheral vision. And the research supports this kind of targeted approach. And of course, this matters because, as we can see, the road is dynamic. We've got hazards, cars, bumps, junctions, etc. And then the other dynamic is the rider proficiency that varies wildly. So then your vision has to be dynamic too to suit your proficiency and the hazards around you.
It's really interesting, and it's a good example, that particular clip, because you've got obviously the crumbly road that's sort of falling away on one edge, but you've also got that in your peripheral vision. You've got certainly the early part of that particular reel. You've got the hedges either side, don't you? So they almost get that kind of what do you call it, tunnel vision, don't you? But
Yeah.
um, I guess as we talked a little bit earlier on about reference points, they must help with vision, right? So it's not just about peripheral or vanishing points. Those reference points have got to help along the way too.
Yeah, 100%. So just picking those visual markers that kind of help you time the corner. And we spoke a lot about reference points. We'll just flick the clip up again here. We're brake and we turn in apex in the middle of the corner and then our exit points. And, those things are to help us prevent getting lost in the corner. And I'm sure everybody's kind of felt a wee bit, lost in the corner at one point. And on if the road's familiar, the reference point might be, a post or a patch of tarmac or something like that. But of course, the road is dynamic, so it always goes to the safety bubble. So reference points can change, depending on the hazards and debris and cars and so forth.
Do you know, I found that recently. There's a lovely road that I often use for when I'm out testing bikes. It's only a few miles from my house, but there's a nice little stretch of corners there. And there's one particular bit. So if you come round, there's a nice tight right, and then there's a little squirty straight, and then there's a nice tight left. So you kind of up through the gear, then you back down the gear, and then you tip in. And I know where the what do you call it, like a drain
Ah,
cover is on
yeah,
the inside of the road. So always stay a little bit far out, so it's more sort of lane position two, rather than kind of apexing the corner.
yeah.
And of course, I went around there the other day, and it completely changed. There was a big, almost crater in the inside where a lot of trucks had been. So it just goes to
Mm,
show that you don't have to, or you shouldn't second guess roads that you are all already or seemingly familiar with. But
yep.
look, I just want to talk about peripheral vision a little bit more, Mark. How can peripheral vision really kind of affect the way in which we ride and our overall riding strategy?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a really important part, and like like a lot of motorcycle riding, it's really about mindfulness. Just being aware and being mindful of that. And of course, we spoke about the mind gaze, towards the vanishing point, but peripheral vision is kind of what opens up the whole picture, and it kind of tells you, where the line edge is, the center line, if there's something moving. It helps with your balance as well, reduces mental fatigue, believe it or not, and then reduces the chance of tunnel vision, which is like the where you don't want to go. So it's kind of like,
Mm.
the boxers, they don't stare at their opponent's fist. They look at the body, and peripherally they can kind of react quicker, and riding's a bit similar. If you stare at the hazard, you're often going to go towards that. So if you see the hazard peripherally, then you're kind of looking for your escape route and give yourself some options then.
Yeah, and that's kind of refers to what target fixation, isn't it? That's a phrase that we've heard and we've spoken about before. Perhaps you want to talk a little bit about your experience with target fixation here.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're over 10,000 students over the years, and we see riders even when in a training environment, especially, at a racetrack training environment, even though we're training for road riding, you can do high speed training, in that safe, controlled environment. And we see that target fixation, and it's obviously when you see it, it's really hard to, believe that somebody that could happen to them, and it happens all the time, a car, and it's a surprise, right? When you get a surprise, and that surprise could be you're riding, like we spoke before with that sight distance ratio, you're just going a wee bit too quick for your eyes and your brain, or you get a surprise with a car, and then, the eyes lock onto the car and the bike goes there, if that kind of makes sense. So, if
Mm.
we've got this little clip here, and you can see, the rider's most likely looking up here, but peripherally, on the right hand side, there's obviously could be hazards there, but they're not as important as the ones on this side on the left. So there's a couple of cars, but you can be looking at these vehicles peripherally while you're looking further up the road. That's the key thing. And then that keeps your mind gaze to look for the escape route and keep that peripheral then, to monitor the hazard. But that's not it doesn't come naturally to a lot of people. It has to be kind of trained, but it can be trained. And, the research again supports, that idea.
It's amazing the amount of information that we take in and we process and almost spit out again because we don't need it. Once we're past, we don't need it. But it's going on all the time, isn't it? And I think that actually a lot of people who don't ride don't necessarily understand the mental fatigue that you get as riding a bike because we do so much. It's all about spotting the danger, planning the route, etc., etc. But look, I just want to come back to your school. You've mentioned it a couple of times already, and really to kind of help everyone who's watching this move along. Do you have any particular drills that will help vision or improve vision?
Yeah, we do. We got a bunch of drills that'll help, especially in the corners. And your point about the brain and the mental fatigue, there is a kind of positive side of that. And I think it was in Japan. There's research come out that motorbike riders are less likely to get Alzheimer's and dementia because of
Hmm,
that. Their brains are like working like a supercomputer. So that's a positive thing for motorcycling. But back to
I
the
like that.
drills. Yeah, so I guess the first one is, that kind of vanishing point awareness, and a big thing is just being mindful. So you could be on your, favorite twisty road, and watching that limit point and just being mindful. Okay, is it moving away, or is it coming towards me, or is it kind of staying the same? So moving away, the corner's going to open up. Coming towards you, the corner's tightening. If it stays constant, you're kind of on the same line, maintenance throttle. So, the goal's not to ride faster, but it's kind of to, use that information and to read the road earlier and just kind of be mindful. And that's a good little drill. And then the sight distance check, that's a good one. Am I looking beyond the distance that I need to stop, right? And you and I know the distance we can stop in because we practice, we do the drills, right? But if the answer's no, that's when you gotta slow down, lift your eyes. The vision has kind of got to lead the speed, not chase it. So that drill's really, really useful, especially on the twisties. And then the peripheral drill, again, you can be riding on a quiet road and just, again, keeping your gaze ahead. And then you can start describing the things that you can see around you. It might be a lamppost, a parked car, what color is that car without directly looking at it. And once you start practicing that, a vehicle in the mirror, that's a big one. You don't have to look directly at the mirror. Peripherally, you can kind of see what's happening in the mirror, and that teaches your brain to kind of keep the picture alive while your mind gazes looking at that vanishing point or the limit point. And then another one is that I think is super important: escape route, practicing an escape route, right? So you can see a hazard, right? Don't stare at it, but figure out, okay, if that car was moved across and was a danger to me, where could I go? So you're moving your kind of mind gaze to this escape route or the escape location, while you're, peripherally watching the hazard. So that's a really good way to, prevent target fixation. So that's a big one. Okay, so another great drill is the move your head. And, a lot of riders that we find, they're kind of just moving their head a little bit, whereas you can really, if you practice, it'll surprise you. And it's just that muscle memory. So, in a car park, for example, and we've got the Mr. Mann here on the fine CB and the drills. And if we just peel this back a little bit, you'll kind of see what I mean. hopefully, yep, perfect vision there, Mr. Mann. So we can see, the direction, and you're riding on this circle here. But if you look at your eyes, you're probably, if you look at that line, you're looking well round the corner. So that's a really great drill to, move your head much further than you think and exaggerate that movement, and that will help your visual skills.
I like what you said there about talking to yourself, and it's something that I do pretty much every ride, even if it's just 30 seconds a minute. I'll have a little just period during the ride where I'll start to describe stuff that I can see. Not necessarily because I'm working on vision, but it's just to keep me alert.
Yeah.
And also to kind of train myself to picking out danger, whether it's, whether I'm doing, I don't know, whatever, 70 on a dual carriageway and I can see in the distance as a roundabout. So I'll start to think about what are my dangers here and how can I get around that roundabout with the momentum? And I'll talk about it. And in towns, it's harder because there's so much going on. You almost can't keep up, and then it becomes a distraction.
Yeah.
But it's a really good point, and I like doing it because it keeps me a little bit sharp, and it's good practice, isn't it? Ultimately,
100%. I guess it's supporting your mind, being mindful, and that's the key thing.
and moving. Yeah, you're right about moving, not just your eyes, not just having a little glance, but actually moving. Because we're used to doing lifesavers in our world, so why not move your whole body or your whole head and give yourself an opportunity to really use that peripheral vision. Mark, we've talked a lot in this episode, and there's a lot of detail, there's a lot of analysis, and there's a lot of help and advice, especially with all those drills. Can we summarize it, do you reckon?
Yeah, well, I guess in a summary, riding well and visioning corners, it's not just a sixth sense, because that's kind of, sixth sense is often experience, which can be kind of an expensive teacher. So, the best approach is that structured practice, mind gaze on the vanishing point and dynamic reference points to shape the corner, peripheral vision to maintain that awareness. We really want to have that kind of 360 situational awareness. Scanning for hazards without fixating on them. So, really look where the solution is, not where the kind of problem is, if that makes sense. But most importantly is to keep your vision beyond that stopping distance. And if your eyes are too close, then your brain is kind of light. And if you find yourself, like a wee bit nervous or, steering jerk, lots of steering corrections, then that's kind of a bit of an alarm bell. So, do it properly and your riding will flow. That's what it should feel like. And of course, we always use the analogy, 20 hours of training to get your license is only the beginning. And motorcycling mastery, that's a whole of life journey.
Brilliant. Mark, thank you. Loads of info to take away there. And what is happening in the next episode? What can we look forward to?
Next episode 28, yes, so that one's called Signal to Noise, and it's really about how to focus on the right things.
Okay, all right, so like an advancement of vision perhaps. Brilliant. All right, Mark, we'll look forward to that. Thank you very much for your time, and we'll see you then.
No worries. Cheers, Michael.
Thanks to Mark, thanks to Bennetts, and thanks also to Honda Motorcycles UK, of course. So in the meantime, don't forget to check out that other Better Riding episodes. I'll put a link to the playlist for all of those episodes in the comment section below, or you just go to the playlist section of our YouTube channel. So not only can you post your questions, if you have any questions, comments, thoughts, or even your own tips in this YouTube section below, but you can also come to our own social media site. It's called Bennetts Bike Club. So also you need to search for in your search engine, Bennetts Bike Club. There's around 2,500 members in there already, and a host of actual experts. And then while you're at it, how about becoming a BikeSocial member as well, which entitles you to access over 300 different apparel, clothing, and training discounts. Just search for BikeSocial membership. Brilliant. Thanks for being with us, and we'll see you next time. Honda Motorcycles are supporting this series because safety is one of their key business pillars, and their quest for safety inspires their innovations in products, technology, and education, which is why they're committed to achieving zero traffic fatalities involving Honda mobility products worldwide by 2050.